Hello and welcome to my 9-day run of Pikmin. So right here I pulled up the high score screen, and you can pause that if you want to take a look at those. As you can see, I have previously completed this type of run before, but that was a few years ago. And right here I still have the save file from then. As you could probably tell, I am commenting over footage that is already recorded, rather than narrating at the same time as playing. I actually did attempt that at first, but it was much easier for me to focus while not talking. Also, this is the original version of the game, that is to say the GameCube version, and I played it using the Wii's backwards compatibility. Now, obviously in this video you will see me complete the game and get the best ending within 9 in-game days, but I will also be commenting on the game's design, my own experience with the game, strategies I used in this run, and things like that. And one more thing before commenting about what's on screen. Throughout this playthrough, you'll see that I skip the text. That's because this video is not really focused on giving you the entire story of the game and stuff like that. It's more about the challenge. Now, with that out of the way, if you want me to make a casual Pikmin playthrough, let me know. Or just Pikmin related videos. And also, since we're on this topic, you'll see that I don't skip any of the cutscenes. That's because you can't. That is one flaw with the game, but I actually really like all the cutscenes, so I don't have too much of an issue with it. But when you've played this game multiple times, that type of thing can get annoying. So of course it would be better if they were skippable, but this could have just been an artifact from, that time in game design. But anyway, we're getting off track. Alright, so now the first bit of gameplay you get is this little section where the camera is super zoomed in and you can't change it. And I think that's kind of interesting because I don't know exactly why they made it this way, but I would just take a guess and say that they were trying to make the player feel disoriented, just like the character. So I think that is pretty cool because he just crash landed here, and so he doesn't know much about his surroundings, so we're not able to see much about our surroundings. That's just an idea, but it does seem like a nice bit of design, because even if you're someone like me who's played this game before, you know what you're looking for in this section, the dormant red onion. But with this zoomed in camera, you might not be able to find it. You have to wander around. Anyway, here we go. We have our first Pikmin. And with this little discovery, we can see something interesting about the game itself. The cutscenes, all of them, or maybe almost all of them, are not pre-recorded videos. Rather, the cutscenes are actually happening in the game. And right there, we could tell that was happening because you could see Almar's shadow right behind the Pikmin. And that can lead to some interesting cases where the thing the cutscene's trying to show you, sometimes a Pikmin seed or a Pikmin, is obscured by something in front of it, so I think that's kind of interesting. And I don't think I ever encountered that before, but I did encounter it during this challenge run. And saying that does remind me, throughout this playthrough I did find one or two more things that I've never seen before. Of course, we will see those later in the game, but for now I'll give you a hint. I'll just say that Pikmin is a masterfully coded game that doesn't have any bugs or glitches or exploits to speak of. Anyway, about what's happening on screen, you'll see that I'm just going through the tutorial. It is one of the very linear parts of this game, and also you could probably tell this is not even really a speed run. I'm sure you could tell my Pikmin organization and, moving Olimar is not the best it could be. It's definitely not speedrun level. We're not trying to speedrun this and get the fastest time possible. I am just trying to beat the game with the restriction of only having 9 in-game days to do so. And basically that's just because I'm not a speedrunner. I don't really like speedrunning things. That's not what I would call it. But what I do like to do is optimize the playthroughs of certain games. So I have done this with, of course, Pikmin. You've seen I've already done the 9-day run before. But I also did this with the Resident Evil 2 remake. But anyway, what I'm talking about specifically is before I play the game, or while playing the game and doing trial and error, I try to optimize my route in order to, usually beat the game under a certain amount of time. So in Resident Evil 2 remake, there are these ranks you can get if you beat the game under certain times. So I believe if you beat the game in under 2.5 hours, you'll get an S rank. So that was really fun for me. I never did get an S plus rank in that game. Anyway though, it's basically open design and leaving the player to make a lot of the decisions about how they're going to progress in the game. That kind of lends itself well to this optimization type of run that I like to do. Anyway, to get back to the point here, the quote-unquote speedruns that I like to do are kind of what I would call optimizing my run or planning my playthrough and trying to get it as fast as possible to beat my own time, right? So I'm kind of doing a speed run against myself, or a challenge run against myself, rather than competing for the world record. But since we're on this topic, I do like watching speedruns. Oh, I have watched the speedrun of this game, and the one I watched was 49 minutes and 49 seconds. I don't know if that is still the world record today, but that was very interesting. And this does remind me of another tangential topic related to this playthrough. You'll see that a lot of my strategies are not optimized as much as they could be. I mean, I think that's obvious, since we're only beating the game in 9 days instead of 6. But the reason I'm saying this is because it's not like I'm taking someone else's strategy and trying to do it, see if I can do it. Part of what I find really cool about doing a run like this is the planning part and trying to come up with an effective strategy and then execute it. So yeah, the strategies here are pretty much all my own. There are like 2 or 3 exceptions, and I'll mention them when they come up. Anyway, all I'm saying with this is that we are not going down a predefined path here, and I will discuss why and how I came up with certain strategies as we go. Anyway, this is a good time to mention something that I always notice again when replaying this game. For only the first couple of days, the camera will zoom in when you're plucking Pikmin out of the ground. We'll see later exactly when this stops happening, but I don't know what triggers that. My best guess is that it stops either after a certain amount of days passing or ship parts collected, something like that. Also, I'm not certain why the designers implemented something like this. They definitely wanted to call your attention to this process, or maybe the animation itself, I don't know. It is an interesting choice though, but it definitely becomes noticeable once you get used to this not happening on the later days. Alright, so we are now almost done with the tutorial. We're just carrying back the engine to the ship, and we're doing that with 25 Pikmin, which is the max amount of Pikmin you can get on the tutorial. You can beat it just by getting 20, but of course having more Pikmin is going to be more beneficial for us, so I got the full 25. You could also do something which I have done before. You can wait, because if you don't know, there's this mechanic where if the Pikmin stay in the ground, they will bloom over time. And Pikmin that have bloomed, like they have a flower on their head instead of a leaf, or they have a bud on their head, those are basically just faster than their leaf or bud counterparts. And obviously that's important in this type of game and in this type of run. But yeah, so as I was saying, you can wait and leave the Pikmin in the ground on this first day since there's no time limit. You're not really losing anything except for your own personal time. So I just didn't do it, but we could have done that and got a little bit of a strategic edge. Here is our first end of day cutscene. One thing I noticed, you'll see at the end of this, there is no creature that comes, like at the end of every one of these cutscenes, a little creature comes, and that's the one that'll kill the Pikmin that are left behind, right? But on this first day, there's no creature like that. If you come back to the same area later, then there will be like a bulborb that comes. We'll see that later in the run, of course. But anyway, they probably did that not to confuse the player. But that's just something interesting I noticed for the first time when doing this run. One more thing that reminds me of is that in, I think it was Smash Brothers Brawl, but it could have been another one, but I think it was Brawl. They had Olimar in there, right? And then they also had music, right, from every character's game, whatever. And you could choose the battle music to be the end of day theme, but it's like a short theme. It's not even like a minute long, so it would just constantly be looping. So I thought that was like a weird design choice. But anyway, I just thought of that now. That was many years ago when I played that game. Anyway though, we're moving on to the Forest of Hope. What you're gonna see here is my successful attempt of this day. And it took me 4 attempts, so this is of course attempt number 4. And later on in the video, I will not only be showing the most successful attempt, like I'll show some of the mistakes I made and some of the times I had to restart and stuff like that. And one thing I want to show you here at the beginning is, as I said earlier, I have done a 9-day run before, and this is not my first time, so I'm more experienced. I kind of know what to do without too much of a plan. But the thing is, on my first time, I was planning out like, okay, I need to get 4 parts. These are the 4 I'm going to get, because there's 8 parts in this area. So I made a map, which I thought was really cool. This was really fun to do. And I calculated how many Pikmin I need. So I need this many red, this many yellow. So I calculated how much food I need to get. So anyway, you can see that information on the map here. But that's just an interesting little side note. I kind of used almost the exact same strategy, I think, on this run that you're of course seeing right now. But speaking of strategy, right now we're just of course waiting inside the landing zone, which you can't really avoid since you need to break down this wall in order to access the rest of the level. So we have most of the Pikmin working on the wall, of course, and then one other one plucking the grass out of the ground. And obviously that's to prepare some nectar for later. That way we can get some flower Pikmin. And as I said before, we need to get 4 parts here, but we also do need to get the yellow Pikmin. So that's kind of like 5 missions we need to accomplish on this day. And it's not really that difficult. You'll see I have some difficulty with certain parts of the run later on. This part did give me some trouble, that's why I had to do 4 attempts in order to get it right. But I feel like that was because I haven't played the game in a long time. So yeah, that could explain my trouble here at the beginning, which wasn't that much compared to what we'll see later, is what I'm trying to say. So yeah, now we're building our red Pikmin population. We're going to need a lot of them because they do 50% more damage than the other Pikmin types. And while we're doing that, I left some reds taking down the wall. That way we can get access to the yellow onion. Since I was back in the landing zone, I checked on this Pikmin here, and we could tell that since he has a flower on his head, there was only one bit of nectar that came out of the grass, so that's not too lucky, but at least we got something, because you can pull all the grass and then not get any nectar, because I guess it's based on a % chance. But anyway, the reason I leave only one is because it gives us a few advantages. Obviously, we have more Pikmin in our party, the less I leave there, but also, if you leave multiple Pikmin, and then they pluck multiple bits of nectar, then they can each individually drink one, so you'll waste. If you only leave one guy there, this is assuming you have no flowers, because ideally you leave the flower there, that way you wouldn't drink at all. But if you only have leaves, what I like to do is leave only one, because if he happens to drink, which is very often the case, then, you know, you'll only kind of waste one, so. Also, by the way, you can see if I'm nearby, I will whistle to the Pikmin when they finish a task, like, even if they're still flushed with color. Like, for example, after they bring something to the onion. And that's because if they are full of color, that means they are going to come back to your party when they're done with their task, but they take a little bit longer than required, so you can whistle them and get them a little bit faster back in your party. And of course, the ones that are pale, they'll just stay there idle. Now here we got a little bit unlucky. One of the Pikmin I threw, and that might have looked weird to you at first, but one of the Pikmin I threw at the dwarf bulborb went for the big one. That looked weird on the recording, but what I think happened is you could tell when I was throwing them, I moved up a little bit. So what I think happened was I threw that one while I was moving, and that made it go a little farther, which is a pretty cool mechanic in this game. Like, if you're standing still and throwing Pikmin, they'll have a certain arc, but if you're running and throw them at the same time, they'll go farther, so I think that is really cool. Adds a little bit of depth to the throwing mechanic. Now, obviously, that little slip up with waking up the adult bulborb accidentally, because I waited for it to go back to sleep. Also, as you could tell, it didn't ruin this attempt, but it did slow down the pace a little bit, and we're already not on a perfectly fast pace, and you'll see what I mean later on in this day. And now I just put some red Pikmin, not enough to pick up the bodies, but I put some there just as a preparation for when I have more yellow Pikmin. That way they can collect heavier objects with the help of the red Pikmin. You know what I mean? Since we just found the next onion here, I want to point out how Olimar backed up because he knew it was about to pop out of the ground. In the cutscene where he finds the red one, he approaches it and then gets hit when it comes out of the ground. So I think that is a really cool minor detail that they included. Obviously that he recognized that this was the same thing, so he should back up before he gets hit. I know I skip all the text in this run, but I just want to say that I think the writing in this game is really good. Here's a quote from that recent text pop-up, and here Olimar is of course describing the newfound yellow Pikmin. This one has what, in some circles, could be considered very large ears. End quote. Anyway though, one thing you'll see me do sometimes is leave food right underneath the onion. Basically, if I send some Pikmin back to the onion, then they'll be standing idle there, and then pick up the food I left. I feel like that saves me a little bit of time. And I actually use that tactic a lot in Pikmin 2's Versus mode, which I do like very much. Every time the Pikmin bring back a part to the dolphin, they'll be in this, happy animation where they're jumping up and down, and some of them stretch. And the thing is, I believe that those animations were meant to show that Olimar is rubbing off on the Pikmin, like he's impacting their behavior because they're copying him. Because at the beginning, if you noticed, Olimar did a little jump. It's the only time I think he jumps in the game, but he jumped in that first part collection cutscene where you get the engine from the impact site. Now also, if you leave Olimar idle, I don't think we see it because I'm never standing idle in this run, but if you leave him idle, he will do a little stretching animation that's very similar to how the Pikmin do it. So I think that is a really cool piece of polish, but there is like an anachronistic element to it where they even do those things on the first day, so which wouldn't make any sense since they haven't had a chance to see Olimar do that type of stuff. But I think it is an interesting thing they included either way, but that's just a little bit of a flaw. This game isn't perfect, but of course it is one of my favorite games. One interesting fact about the game is that all Pikmin types were going to be able to hold bomb rocks at some point in development, and that's known because there are unused images left over in the game of other types holding the rocks. In general, this game's cut content is pretty cool. Anyway, back to what's on screen. You'll see during this next section, I am pretty hesitant. It's like I can't sometimes decide what to do, and I make some mistakes. I should have just thrown that bomb rock holding Pikmin at the bramble wall, but I didn't want to accidentally wake up the Bulborb, so I tried to throw it off to the side just to wait and not be in the way. But as you saw, I unintentionally caused it to throw its bomb rock at that pellet posy, and that of course happened because the pellet posy counts as an enemy. By the way, you'll see I do different strategies almost every time I attack an adult Bulborb, and the thing is, sometimes I'll throw one Pikmin and then swarm the rest around, or sometimes I'll just swarm it, but like make the Pikmin in a long line. And that's because even if you do it the same exact way every time, the impact on the Bulborb won't be the exact same every time. So if I swarm a Bulborb with 50 Pikmin, let's say, sometimes it'll almost instantly, you'll see the health meter drop quickly and almost instantly kill the Bulborb, but other times it seems to go down so slow, and then you're wondering like, what's going on over here because all the Pikmin are attacking him. But the thing is, I think that could be caused by like maybe the Bulborbs take reduced damage when they're doing their chomp animation or something like that. But yeah, it is pretty inconsistent, so I don't have a particular way that I do it every time. Now, one more thing you can see impacting my strategy here is I noticed we do not have a lot of time left in this day, and I didn't want to just quit here, so what I did was I took back the red Pikmin that I left, which would have helped out the yellow Pikmin pick up some more food later, but I felt like I wasn't going to get any more yellow Pikmin today, so I took those guys back. Then I'm trying to speed up the carrying of the radar, and I thought we might as well pick up this food for the reds because, like I said earlier, the reds are very important for this run. That's the Pikmin you're going to need the most, in my opinion. So yeah, we pick up this food, and I only had 55 total Pikmin, so that's not really good, so might as well pick up some stuff while we could. Now we're on our way to pick up the Shock Absorber and the Nova Blaster, since they're pretty close to one another. One interesting thing I only just noticed when doing this run is that this environmental puzzle here is identical to the one on the other side of the map, where the armored cannon beetle is, except for that one having the added element of a bramble wall in the pool of water. I do actually like that reuse of the puzzle because I feel like one is a less advanced form and the other one is like a more advanced form of the same issue that you have to face. And in general, I do very much like the puzzle design in this game. Now, as I've been saying, there are many ways that this day could have played out better, or that I could have strategized better, but one thing I can't complain about is killing the Bulborbs. We are getting them pretty quickly, so we're not encountering that thing like I said, where sometimes for some reason, their health will just drain very slowly. Also, I didn't realize it at the time, or maybe I knew about this in the past many years ago, but either way, if I forgot it or never knew in the first place, you can see with the bomb rocks, I'm pretty slow with getting the Pikmin to blow things up. And the reason I'm saying that is that if you throw them and then whistle them back, they'll drop the bomb rock. Now, instead of doing that, which would speed it up, I'm waiting for the Pikmin to throw the bomb rock, which takes longer. It does take, I would say, probably 1 or 2 seconds around there longer, and that does affect you because you have to wait each time. So yeah, that could have been improved, and I do improve that strategy of using bomb rocks later in the run, but on this day I didn't realize that I could. Right here though, I did get, I don't really want to say lucky, but I was fortunate here. There's multiple things that can happen when you throw multiple bomb rock holding Pikmin at a wall. It depends on, I think, how fast you throw them, but sometimes you'll throw 2, for example, and the second one will get scared by the first one, or just scared by the bomb rock, and then come back to you, which is pretty cool. But anyway, I got kind of fortunate there, because sometimes they'll both just drop it, and that's what I wanted to happen, so. And you'll see as this day's coming to a close, every second counts. Also, one other thing to mention, this ending right here was a little bit improvised. The thing is, usually what I would like to do is have enough red Pikmin to carry the Shock Absorber, then take the rest plus yellow Pikmin to... Well, what I did here was red Pikmin on the Shock Absorber, then my few yellow Pikmin, I just used them to clear the path. Ideally, what I would have done is, like I just said, put a little bit on the Shock Absorber, let them carry it, then take enough to clear the path and start carrying the Nova Blaster. Now I'm using some time just because there's nothing left for us to do. The Pikmin are busy carrying the last part, so we can't really speed it up anymore. So I'm just going to pluck these guys out of the ground while we have some time. And here you can see what I just mentioned. Every second counted because this attempt is only successful by a margin of 2 seconds, because you saw the timer said 2 right there. So I think that is pretty cool. I didn't really expect any of the days to come this close. I don't know if they did on my first time doing a 9-day run, but this one definitely cut very close. Day number 2 here. And we'll see later in the run, we're going to see similar things. I don't want to spoil it for you. And with that, day 2 is complete. From this day forward, I'll put a little note on screen during the end of day cutscenes telling you how many attempts it took me to complete that particular day. I just want to say that this inclusion of a little statistics screen at the end of each day is so cool. For our third day, we're going to our third area, the Forest Navel. Now this was actually my least favorite level in the game prior to doing any 9-day runs. I didn't like it. I also don't like Distant Spring, because I feel like both the Forest Navel and Distant Spring are pretty oppressive because of the enemies you find there, the difficulty of the areas, and of course even the music plays a part in that, because the Forest of Hope and the Impact Site both have more calming tracks. Even though these two, the Forest Navel and the Distant Spring, aren't ambient, but I think you know what I mean. There's a little bit of, they're a little bit intimidating, which is good and definitely fitting. I just bring this up because throughout doing my first 9-day run, and of course I like it here as well, but from doing my first 9-day run, I really grew to like this area, so yeah, it is like my favorite area in the game. While I'm speaking about the areas, let me tell you this as well. We could have, instead of going here, we could have on day 3 gone back to the Forest of Hope and finished that area, because you can finish it without any blue Pikmin at all, but I just prefer to get the blue Pikmin. I like getting them on the 3rd day, so that's why we're here at the Forest Navel. Now you'll see here, I'm not using the usual technique, and I think that's how most people kill him. I think that's how you're intended to kill him, but I'm not doing the usual technique of dragging the bread bug all the way to the onion. Instead, of course using the Pikmin to damage him incrementally, and of course you have to throw them like directly on his back. But one thing I did find out after doing this playthrough, you can actually damage a bread bug by punching it with Olimar. So I never knew that was possible. I wonder if you can do that in Pikmin 2, I'm not sure. Anyway, usually I like to drag him to the onion because obviously when he dies, he'll drop the space float very close to the dolphin, so you won't have to carry it far at all. The thing is, I didn't do that here just because it wasn't working out well in my previous attempts at completing this particular day. I'm not actually sure, but it always felt to me when I was playing this game that the pop rock stuff gives you less nectar than the grass. But I'm not sure about that. We seem to have gotten 3 or 4 puddles of nectar right here, so that is pretty good. And by the way, I didn't mention this before, but the maximum number of Pikmin you can have pulling grass or popping the rocks is 5. You know, per patch. You know what I mean. So if you recall, on the previous day I was saying how Olimar reacted in the cutscene to the yellow onion in a different way than he did to the red onion. So I just wanted to point that out again. He acts exactly the same way here as he did to the yellow onion. By the way, you can see I'm using that strategy I mentioned on day 2, where sometimes I leave food directly under the onion. I didn't expect to be talking about the nectar this much, but anyway, since we're getting some again, you see how I'm like trying to corral the Pikmin and get them very concentrated, and then have them all at once touch the nectar? And that's because you'll know this if you have played this game. The Pikmin, I like to say that they're pretty greedy, but that's not really what it is. It's basically like, there's a very short window for the Pikmin to start drinking the nectar, because once that window's over, any new Pikmin won't start drinking. Their opportunity is gone. So yeah, you have to try getting the Pikmin to interact with the nectar around the same time as each other, you know? That is one thing I feel like they improved in Pikmin 2, because in Pikmin 2, the window is much more generous. But the thing is, there are certain things in this game that increase the difficulty, like for example that with the nectar, and also the Pikmin are a little bit more disobedient in this game compared to the sequels. So for example, sometimes they'll trip in this game, which they do much less in Pikmin 2, I believe. And also if you're walking by an enemy or some interactable thing, the Pikmin tend to try to interact with it even though you didn't tell them to do that, even though they're in your party, you know? That's why, I don't know if you noticed so far, and I don't know if I've done it too much so far, but I do remember doing it quite a bit throughout this playthrough. You'll see I often whistle to the Pikmin even if they're in my party, and even though they're not doing anything. And sometimes I do that just because I want to make sure they're not going to get distracted. So I'm basically preemptively whistling them back into my party, just in case. Now, there are 9 parts in this area, and of course we have to get the blue onion here as well. So there are 10 major objectives to do in this location. So I was thinking to myself, it kind of counts as half if we get 4 parts on this day and the blue Pikmin, because that's 5 missions right there, and then on the second day I come back to the Forest Naval, which will be day 6. I'll get the remaining 5 parts and that's it. Should be simple. But you'll see it doesn't turn out that way, but we'll see that more on day 6. All I'm saying for now is I could have probably made the future days a little bit easier for myself if I played this day here a little differently, but we'll see what happens. Once again, I want to point out to you that you can see some indecision here from me. For now, I'm leaving these fiery blowhogs alive because I intend to use the red Pikmin to carry these ship parts past them. So of course, they're going to pose no threat to the red Pikmin. One more tactic I use that you can see here is when throwing a lot of Pikmin, I tend to use the C-stick in order to move them back and forth. And that's because I'm trying to keep them very close to Olimar. If you don't do that, and you're just clicking A repeatedly in order to throw a lot of them, it'll actually take longer than if you use that C-stick to maneuver them. And the reason for that is the Pikmin take a little bit of time to walk up to you, and then Olimar throws them. Obviously, by maneuvering them, you don't have to go through that waiting process each time. So it does add up. This might seem really disorganized, and I think it is, but what I was trying to do here was put the slower Pikmin on the object. That way I could take the faster Pikmin with me. That's what I was doing there. It kind of worked. I did get more leaves on it than there were before. And now we are approaching the Puff Stool, which is a really interesting enemy. My first playthrough, I do remember I was very, astounded by this enemy because it has kind of a simple pattern of how you kill it. And you'll see the way you kill it is by, scaring it, and then it'll accidentally trip and fall over, and then you attack its underside, while its top mushroom cap part of itself is invulnerable to damage. But anyway, of course, its attack is to spray like a poisonous mist on your Pikmin, and what that'll do is turn them into Puffmin, which I thought was really cool on my first playthrough. You don't see anything like that in the future Pikmin titles. This game has some excellent enemy design in my opinion. I do like how there are some variants of enemies. Like with the pale Wollywogs and with the yellow Wollywogs, they're basically just clones of each other. But with the Shearwigs and the Shear Grubs, I like that there's a cool difference there. Like the Shearwig is identical, except when it's at half health, it'll start flying and try to avoid you. And also, it regens health over time. So that is pretty cool. It's like, you know, a more threatening and just advanced form of the same enemy. So it's pretty cool. And I think it's really cool how there are a bunch of like mini bosses, or just bosses. Well, basically, they're just unique enemies throughout the game, like the Puff Stool, like the Beady Longlegs, which is probably the enemy I dreaded most in this playthrough here. I don't know if that surprises you or not, but that one intimidated me. And that's why I decided not to get the satellite. I believe it's called the guard satellite, the ship part it's holding. But anyway, I decided not to get that on this first day in the Forest Naval. I get that on day 6. That, of course, we'll see much later. But speaking of, right here I am actually getting these bomb rocks mainly to at least open up the path to the Beady Longlegs, because there is a stone wall that leads to its arena. And here's one more interesting mistake. So like I've been saying, my execution of the plans I came up with are not perfect. So sometimes I'm indecisive, and that's probably because I'm coming up with what to do on the spot. But right here as well, you saw I went the wrong way, so I had to turn back around and take the correct path. One more thing about something I possibly could have done better on this day. I don't think I thought this at the time, because I was trying to do some extra things like build up the blue Pikmin population a little bit, and also open up that wall to where the Beady Longlegs and the guard satellite are. But I really did go for the easiest parts, so that also contributed to the difficulty of the second day in this location. I had these extra 2 bomb rocks still, so I decided to try to at least break this wall down over here a little bit. That way the task of breaking down this wall on the next day I come here would be a little faster. And yeah, right here, we already had a quite small, to begin with, population of yellow Pikmin. And now we just lost a lot of them to the blowhog there. Well, actually it wasn't a lot, right? Objectively speaking, but relatively to the amount I had, it was quite a bit, so. Obviously here I was trying to pick up 2 Shearwigs. That way I would sprout more yellow Pikmin, but I kept making the mistake of having 2 Pikmin carry the Shearwig, so I just decided to leave it at that because we don't have much time left in this day. I am short on time here, but also, even though this is at the end of the day, I did have enough time to try to sprout more blue Pikmin, which I probably should have done. But I just didn't do that. I kind of did the safe option. It was perfectly safe to sprout more Pikmin, and I'm sure I could have plucked them out of the ground as well. But I kind of just didn't even want to mess with that, since I did manage to get all the ship parts I wanted to on this day. Also, you can see one nice feature right here, where the Pikmin won't follow Olimar around when he's repeatedly plucking sprouts, which is very nice. That way, you know, the Pikmin won't go anywhere you don't want them to. They'll basically just stay in the spot that they were in when Olimar started plucking. And now another day is done, day number 3. It was okay. It did meet the baseline requirement of this challenge of getting 4 parts plus the blue Pikmin onion, but I'm not really setting myself up for an easier time on the future days. So it was a successful attempt, but could have been much better. We have multiple options now. We could return to the Forest Navel, return to the Forest of Hope, or return to the impact site and finish off any of those areas. So I decided to do, of course, the easiest one first, the impact site. You'll see I make a critical error on this day, but I'll mention that specifically when it happens. And another interesting thing we can see on this day is the one advantage, at least I think there's only one, but either way, we'll see one advantage we get from actually doing this kind of speedy run, where we are very limited on time. And I'll just tell you what that is outright. In this game, depending on what day you're on, certain enemies will begin to spawn. So usually, you'll get more enemies and a more varied type of enemy in each area. So for example, in the Forest of Hope, past a certain day, swooping snitch bugs will appear in that location. You'll see in this run we only encounter those guys in the distant spring, but as I said, if you allow a certain number of days to pass, they will start appearing in the Forest of Hope. Similarly here, depending on what day you come, you can either encounter the Gulix or the Mamuta, but as I've been alluding to, because we're here so early, we don't have to encounter either of those. One more thing related to enemies and time is that after a certain amount of days, the enemies you've killed will respawn as well, so that does help us out. For example, when we go back to the Forest of Hope, the Bulborbs we killed and stuff like that will not have respawned yet, so that is pretty beneficial. The main objectives of this day are to get the only remaining ship part left here, which is easy enough, but also to build our Pikmin population. Because usually, of course, in this type of run, we're super pressed for time, so there's not really a lot of time, even if I'm killing enemies, to collect their bodies, because I need large Pikmin quantities to carry multiple ship parts at once. Obviously, since that's not the case here, there's only one part, we do have some more time to sprout more Pikmin. Here I call these guys back because I forgot to have them activate this geyser. I like that this one is hidden. You can see it's not very easily visible because of the plant that's surrounding it. I like this because I feel like it is building upon the geyser mechanic. So basically in the Forest Navel, which I'm pretty sure the designers assumed you would go to the Forest Navel before coming back here because you need the blue Pikmin from there in order to get the second part here. So in the Forest Navel, the geysers are basically tutorialized to you because there's like a few of them surrounding the landing zone, and they're not really important. I never really activate them, but they do show you the mechanic. And the geysers are one of those things that the Pikmin will interact with when they just pass by them. In other words, you don't have to command them to interact with them, so sometimes that can be distracting. Another similar thing is the grass. If they just pass by the grass, they'll start interacting with it. Anyway, I like that this one is hidden because I feel like it is building off that mechanic you've just learned about. And the only way it kind of builds off it is that you might realize you need a geyser, but it's a little harder now to find it because you don't know where it is. And one reason they might have hidden it is to give some kind of purpose or like value to that aspect of the Pikmin where they will interact with the geysers and the nectar and stuff like that, even if they're not told to do so. Let's call it their disobedient side or disobedient nature or something like that. Because this is really like the only time in the game that comes in handy. Because I remember the first time I ever found this hidden geyser, and it's not, of course, super hidden, but the first time I found this, it was because I was just walking by with the Pikmin and I was like, oh, okay, hey, the guy's just here, because they were attacking it. As we are seeing here, if you are building your Pikmin population, you're going to spend a significant amount of time, maybe it's not too much, but it is a significant amount of time plucking the Pikmin out of the ground. So it's like adding a little bit of a commitment there, where if you're trying to grow more Pikmin, you're going to have to spend a little bit more time not only carrying the food back to the onions, but also plucking them out of the ground. I sometimes avoid this. You'll see I generally keep the number of Pikmin in the field very high, and that's because I need those Pikmin, but also when 100 are in the field, the new Pikmin will automatically go into the onion. They won't sprout in the ground. Anyway, the reason I brought this up is that I kind of like how you have to spend time plucking the Pikmin. Not that I think it's super enjoyable, but I like the commitment aspect, and I don't really like how much the later titles sped up this process, so particularly in Pikmin 3 it's pretty quick. But Pikmin 2, it is pretty cool that since you have two captains, they both pluck the Pikmin at the same time. So I guess that's fine, but in Pikmin 3 it's a little fast. Especially also, in the later games they reduce the amount of time that the Pikmin are in their initial stage. Like when they go into the ground, they're not just leaves. They're like that little tiny sprout that can't be plucked, and then after a while they become the leaf you can pluck. That is also reduced in later titles, so I don't really like that they sped that up. I felt like they made it a little easier. Right in this spot here, the tree stump, this is where the Gulix or the Mamuta would appear, of course. So right here is an excellent example of one of the major flaws I think that this game has with its controls. I'm trying to grab the bomb rock holding Pikmin, that way I can take down this wall quickly. But to do that, to grab a specific Pikmin, you have to have it close to Olimar. So basically the way it works is that Olimar will grab the Pikmin that's closest to him. So there's no other way really to be precise with which one you're picking up. For example, if you want to pick up a certain color, or you want to pick up a certain type, like if it has a leaf or a flower on its head, you can dismiss them into different groups and organize them that way, or you can maneuver Olimar to be close to it, but both of those take a little bit more time than you would like. And again, that is one thing that they improved with Pikmin 2, because in that game, and I believe even in the Pikmin new play control version, which is actually the first version of Pikmin I played, you can, when you pick up a Pikmin and you're holding them, you can cycle through by clicking on the D-pad, and that'll give you the different types. And if you cycle to the right and left, I believe, that's a different color. But if you do up and down, that's a different leaf, bug, or flower type. Now we are attacking the Pearly Clamp. Basically, my strategy is always to throw like one Pikmin to get it started on its attack, because the safe window for attacking is extremely short. So what I like to do is have it close its mouth, and then while it's opening up, start throwing the Pikmin. That way they get ready to attack. Because as you'll see, when you throw the Pikmin, they take like a second to notice the little force field and then start attacking it. So combine that with the short window and you don't do that much damage per cycle. Right here, this was kind of interesting. This never happened to me before. You could see I was whistling to these red Pikmin, but I believe since the cutscene started, it basically stopped the process of me whistling. So I think that's why they didn't respond to the whistle and come back to me. They kept attacking and obviously they got eaten. So that was kind of interesting. Not a major loss, but yeah. Another possibility to explain that is maybe I was so close to the clam that the Pikmin were in my party and were next to me, you know? But in order to be next to me, they didn't have to climb off of the clam. That's up another possibility, if you know what I mean. Now right here, this was, I think it was semi-good thinking, but it was really quite unnecessary, and this was the fatal flaw with this day, or at least my strategy on this day. But you could see, I thought, okay, so we have a nice pearl, and that gives you a ton of Pikmin, so might as well give it to the Pikmin population that's the least, which is the yellow, so I only have like 8 of them. So I did that, and then I gave this 20 pellet to the blue Pikmin, and I thought, you know, alright, we're building a lot of blue Pikmin today, we're building a lot of yellow, it's very good. The problem is, we don't even need that many yellow Pikmin. At max, we kind of need like 15 to beat the game. It is nice always to have extra, especially for the final boss, but you'll see I never really use the amount I grow here. I never take out around 70 yellow Pikmin. So this was way too much. I should have just used the regular 1 pellets to build the yellow Pikmin population and then give the pearl to the blue Pikmin, because I thought I was comfortable. I wasn't calculating. I just thought, alright, we gave them a lot of 10 and 20 pellets. Whatever, the blue Pikmin population is fine. But as you'll see, when we get to the distant spring, this was a major mistake on my part. On the distant spring, we'll talk more about it when we get there, but what I like to do there, what I did, I remember on my first time doing a 9-day run, is you take out 100 blue Pikmin, because there's a ton of water in that area, and then you get things done, and then whatever, you switch out the types. Anyway, I'm talking too much about that. We'll see that in the coming days, and then I'll discuss more. Now we're basically done here as far as the parts are concerned, of course. So I was just looking for the beetle again, just to get some more nectar, because we are sprouting some more Pikmin. Now I was thinking here, alright, maybe he despawns from the area after you encounter him like 4 times, but yeah, that's not the case. You can see he pops out right here. So that's kind of interesting. I think he has set locations where he is. Like the 2nd time he'll always be in the same place, the 4th time he'll always be in the same place, you know what I mean? Now this is pretty helpful, as I've been saying, to get more flowers, but this is kind of like a 2nd and 3rd mistake you'll see right here in quick succession. I was focusing on the flowers, even though there was more food around, like the 1 pellets. Those could be very useful. I should have probably picked those up and given them to the blue Pikmin onion. But you could see immediately after that, I end the day early. There was only like 10 more seconds, but like I said, I should have had my priorities a little bit changed. Been collecting pellets and used all the time there was in the day, but I didn't do that. So we're setting ourselves up and making this a lot more harder than it has to be, as you'll see. I didn't think it was that big of a deal at the time, but of course when the distant spring comes, I learned my lesson. By the way, did you catch it? Something strange happened on this day. At the beginning of the day, the camera was still zooming in. Remember I mentioned on the first day that at the beginning of the game, the camera will zoom in on Olimar when he's plucking the Pikmin, but later in the game that doesn't happen? For some reason, at the beginning of this day, and rewatching the footage to do this commentary, I was thinking, this is pretty annoying, the camera zooming in. I was like, when is it gonna stop? And then, right there, a couple of minutes ago, when I was just plucking those yellow Pikmin, that was the first time that the camera did not zoom in. And from now on, it won't. Very strange. as I mentioned before, I love looking at the graph and the numbers, very cool inclusion. But you could see the mistake here kind of as well, like you should never really have yellows be the largest of the Pikmin populations, and it is here, so that's not good, having a low amount of red Pikmin, and especially a low amount of blue Pikmin. The next day, day number 5, I want to finish off the easier of the 2 areas we have available now, so we're going to go back to Forest of Hope rather than the Forest Navel. A lot of what we're going to be doing today involves the blue Pikmin, so I took them out first. Here I'm taking out the shear grubs because they are not that dangerous, but they can either slow down or reverse your progress on the stick bridges because they eat them and roll them up again. I'm setting them up here to get the Sagittarius. Not too much of a complex strategy here, but I just put a few on this first bridge and then a few more on the other bridge because that one's a little bit longer. You'll see that I split up what I'm having the blue Pikmin do, and I think I did a pretty good job of managing the blue Pikmin. Stuff like that was pretty good in this day, although there were some more mistakes, and like I was saying on the previous days, the mistakes I make there related to the populations of the Pikmin types, they basically compound over time, and we'll see that later. Now I'm getting these yellow Pikmin. We're going to need them to destroy some of the walls that are left in this region. And as usual, we're going to use the reds for their higher attack power. One thing that does make me curious is I wonder if, since reds have a higher damage output, if they will build bridges and destroy walls and stuff like that faster than the other types. Because they have to hit those things, you know? So I wonder if it's like an HP based thing, but I never did hear anything like that where red Pikmin are better at doing those types of tasks. So if I had to bet, I would just guess that it's not true, but that would be something interesting to test out. Now you see I took the red Pikmin even though I didn't need to, because all these shear grubs in this little spot are female, so the females don't kill your Pikmin, only the purple males do. But I took the red Pikmin over here because I thought the Bulborbs and the shear grubs we killed on day number 2 in this spot would have respawned by now, but apparently not. So apparently it takes more days than I expected, but I thought that if you kill an enemy, then the next day it won't be there, but then the next day after that, it'll respawn. But that doesn't seem to be the case. So I wonder if different enemies have like different respawn timers. Like some will respawn in 2 days, others will respawn in 3 days, something like that. Or do all respawning enemies just share the same kind of timer system? And speaking of respawning and spawning enemies, like I mentioned previously, over time as the days pass, enemies become either more varied or more frequent in each of the areas. We just saw one of the examples of that here a few minutes ago on screen. Was nearby a newly spawned Bulborb right between this spot and where we found the dormant yellow onion. Like I said, just a simple strategy for this. Nothing too much to talk about, but I'm just taking the Pikmin that completed the bridge, adding them to the longer bridge. That way it'll get done a little sooner. Honestly, I probably could have saved some time by just putting the red Pikmin I had up there, but I decided to take both the red and the yellows and the blues that I'll pick up that completed that wall that was in the water, just to have, you know, a lot of Pikmin attacking the armored cannon beetle and the wall that's here as well. But like I said, probably could have been fine if I used the yellow Pikmin for something else, but either way, the strategy worked. I like how these Bulborb's noses and snores are in sync, by the way. Wow, this is strange. Look at this. I didn't even plan to say this, because I didn't notice this when I said that, but take a look at this. Now their snoring is out of sync. I wonder if that's because one was off screen for longer than the other, and that impacted that animation for some reason? I don't know. And this enemy is another example of how the enemy design and boss design and stuff like that is so cool in this game. I feel like this is a very unique creature, and that does remind me on my first playthrough. Well, on your first playthrough, if it's blind, right, you won't know how to defeat certain enemies like the Snagrit and the Armored Cannon Beetle are two examples I remember from the first time I was playing this game. So what I would do sometimes is, because Olimar sometimes talks about what you actually did during gameplay, during the part where he writes his diary at the end of each day. What I used to do sometimes was like, oh, I encountered a new enemy, let me just interact with it, have it kill a couple of Pikmin, and then hopefully Olimar will write about it in the journal, and then I could learn about how to attack it or whatever. And I think that is pretty cool. I don't think that was necessarily intended to work that way, where someone would interact with the creature in order to purposefully get a journal entry on them. Rather, I think that was just like included just to add maybe a hint for people that didn't understand how to beat certain enemies. But anyway, I think it is pretty cool that it worked out that way for me. That was an extremely slow armored cannon beetle kill. I'm usually not the best at killing this enemy, but that was a little lengthy, I have to say. Now, this right here is the mistake I was mentioning earlier. Again, of course, it has to do with how I am growing the Pikmin populations. I'm giving this armored cannon beetle corpse to the red Pikmin, and I was thinking that's a good idea because they're like the type that is most liable to die since I use them in battle all the time. So it wouldn't really hurt to have more. The thing is, that's true, but I should have given this corpse, since it gives a lot of sprouts, to the blue Pikmin, then given smaller things like the pellets and shear grubs to the red Pikmin. So slowly growing the reds and then try to bolster a lot the blue population, but I just was not looking at the numbers too in depth. Having more red Pikmin did help me, but by the end of the day, you'll see that I have 99 in total, and I don't think you really need that much. I certainly don't use that much at a single time, but even if some were to die, you probably don't need 99 in this type of run. So I definitely should have given that to the blue population. I'm just splitting up the Pikmin, that way I can leave the yellows here. We don't need them for this next section, and the less Pikmin the better actually for this, because the more Pikmin you have, the easier it is to accidentally lose some in the water, because you have to cross the narrow bridge. And now our squad is heading to get the final part in this area, the Geiger counter. And I guess it is little stuff like that that got me really interested in this game when I was a kid as well. So not only do the enemies and the environment kind of tell a little bit of a story of like almost a post-apocalyptic Earth, but some of Olimar's comments and his ship parts do point to that as well. Like the Geiger counter, we'll see that's like the most obvious example because it's called the Geiger counter directly. That's something of course we have in real life, and the thing is going off the charts, kind of cluing you into the fact that this area at least is quite radioactive. It seems like there's a little bit of a deeper story that the developers were kind of hinting at, and that's why we see familiar creatures, but they're also strange to us. Like the Snagret, of course, reminds us of both the bird and the snake. The Wollywogs, of course, like frogs, and it's stuff like that. Now, like I was saying on day 2, we could get all these parts in this area without the blue Pikmin, and especially this one. As you saw, the Pikmin didn't have to go into the water. I threw them over the box, so you could use, red or yellow Pikmin to do that. But one advantage of having the blues here is that if you have the blues carry the Geiger counter, they'll take an alternate route than the other Pikmin, and it's going to be much faster and much safer, so I always like using the blues to take the Geiger counter. From the map here, you can see there were multiple things, like there were some Pikmin I left behind near that little box puzzle, and others are the group that I left near the landing zone. But anyway, I decided that I couldn't save them all. I am focusing a little bit on getting some nectar and some more flowers. And then I do go to rescue one lone blue Pikmin. Another foolish mistake here. I think I was just kind of wanting to play it safe, even though there was no real risk to doing these things. I took the blue Pikmin off those yellow pellets. It would only give me a little bit, but every little bit's gonna help. And once again, you can see we had an extremely close attempt right here. And I think that those are pretty cool. I was pretty nervous in the moment for a lot of this run, but especially on those days that cut it close. I think that's why this was so fun to do. And with that, we have another day down. Day number 5 is complete, and so is the Forest of Hope. We'll never have to come back here in the run. So here we can see what I mentioned about the Pikmin populations. We do have a comfortable amount of reds. That is a good advantage to have, but it did come at the cost of what I would say is a necessary, not even a comfortable, but a necessary amount of blue Pikmin. So that is going to cause us a little bit of a problem here on day 6, but as I said when we were here in the Forest Navel, even more of an issue when we head to the distant spring. We will get to that when the time is right. There were a lot of steps in my different strategies for this day, not only because I needed to collect 5 parts in a single day, but also because of the number of enemies and environmental obstacles in our way. My first strategy was to get the anti-dioxin filter first, since it is one of the farthest and heaviest parts. The problem with that is that 4 out of the 5 parts left in this area are pretty far from the dolphin. Anyway, on my 3rd attempt, I was kinda close to successful. First, I got 35 red Pikmin, 45 blue, and 19 yellow Pikmin. Then I took out 2 of the blowhogs, distracted the Wollywogs, and set the blue Pikmin to pick up the filter. While they were carrying that, I destroyed the nearby bramble wall and killed another blowhog guarding the narrow path. Since I was right here, I also got the yellow Pikmin from the ground. Next, I interrupted the blues and took everyone down the narrow path, having yellows start building the bridge to the Libra, while using blues and reds to move the analog computer. Once the computer was past the fire geysers, I used the reds to speed up the bridge. I want to point out how it was pretty cool that the Libra bounced right to the red Pikmin, which is the type I want to use to carry it. The physics in this game are a little weird and unpredictable, so the Libra does not bounce the same way every time. We will see more examples of this in future attempts. Now, as 3 parts are being carried at once, I just wait here. I should have gotten the Ionium Jet number 1 during this time, so that was foolish. Also, one more thing to note here is that the path the Pikmin need to take could have been significantly shortened if I broke down the rock wall right here in the landing zone. After collecting the parts and switching out some Pikmin, I defeated the beady longlegs and got the guard satellite, but then ran out of time before I could collect it, or even touch the Ionium Jet number 1. After this, during attempts 4 through 17, I was trying a new strategy where I started off by getting the closest part, the Ionium Jet, first, while also picking up the bomb rocks that are right next to it in order to break down the rock wall leading to the landing zone. This would, as I mentioned, make the path the Pikmin have to take to the dolphin quite a bit shorter, and I was hoping this would push me over the edge and allow me to succeed. I made many mistakes when transporting the bomb rocks and blew my squad to smithereens a few times. on attempt 17, something interesting happened with the Libra. Take a look. At first I tried looking for it, and I thought it could be back at the landing zone, because if Olimar gets out of bounds, like he falls off the map, he'll instantly be teleported to the landing zone. So I thought maybe the same thing happened here, but as you can see on the map, the Libra is still here somewhere, just behind the hill in the darkness, I guess. That sucked, but at least it was interesting to capture on video. After this, I was thinking about my strategy, and I realized that getting the closest and lightest part first was probably foolish, so I switched back to the filter first strategy with a few modifications. Now usually I did not fail to losing all my HP, but sometimes I was pretty careless, either because I was rushing or something like that, and I did die a couple times. I was pretty scared that if I were to die, or if I were to run out of time, which both automatically end the day and give you the end of day cutscene, and then you get to that part where you're asked, do you want to save? I was worried that during one of those failures, I would accidentally click save and basically just ruin the run and have to start it over from the beginning. That's why here, I copied the save data just in case I made a mistake. I had another one to go back to. Now, I did not end up saving accidentally or anything like that, but I'm showing you this because this does become very important later, but I won't say exactly why for now. Anyway, one last interesting thing to show you before my successful attempt. Again, I was getting the Libra, and I've never seen this before. Apparently, Pikmin can jump now. I just thought this was really interesting and kind of funny, so this was actually pretty cool to encounter. Now, after my 31st failure, I switched to getting the guard satellite first, and on attempt 36, I was finally successful. And of course, I will show you that attempt in full. Throughout my many attempts, I was constantly trying to tweak and find the perfect amount of each Pikmin type to get. And you can see here, I got 30 reds, 42 blues, and quite a bit of yellow Pikmin, 27. For a long time, I was just getting almost the bare minimum, so 17, something like that. And that's because you need 15 to carry the Libra from the high ledge. But the thing is, I realized it's better for me to take more yellows, because the more yellows you have, the faster you can defeat the beady longlegs. So it was more useful to have those extra yellows rather than the extra reds. You can see I'm clearing the path a little bit, taking out the blowhogs. And now I'm taking these 8 yellow Pikmin to the far location that the bomb rocks are. But yeah, I just left them there for later, and 8 is exactly how many we need, because we need 6 for the rock wall, and then we need 2 for the bramble wall, just to speed that up a little bit. I guess this is a good time to mention this as well, another quirk of this game. Dismissing is kind of inconsistent as well. You can see sometimes they're a little bit more spread out than you would like. I don't really know how it works, but I believe that is another improvement to the controls that they added to Pikmin 2. Anyway, now we are going to get the guard satellite from the BD Longlegs. Sometimes I had an extremely quick fight with this enemy, but other times it took just a little bit longer. And I would say it is surprising how quickly you can take it out. Like I said earlier, this was the enemy slash part that intimidated me the most, and that's just because I know there's fire geysers, sheer wigs, and sheer grubs in the way, and also it is pretty far from the dolphin, so all those add up. And the BD Longlegs itself, I thought that would be a little bit more difficult to defeat, but yeah, it actually went pretty well. Usually, the Pikmin are pretty good at this. If you throw them, they'll interact with the closest object. So I don't know why it interacted with the blowhog there instead of the pellet. Anyway, you can see here, I'm distracting the Wollywogs. And this is one of those, because I mentioned earlier, I believe on the first day, I mentioned that certain strategies, which I'll point out to you, I didn't come up with. I learned them from watching a speed run or something like that. Now, the last speed run I watched, it was a couple of years ago. So I don't remember all the best strategies or whatever, I just mostly know from my own experience. But anyway, one thing that I never really came up with myself was distracting creatures rather than defeating them. I usually tend to just defeat them. Something like the sheer wigs and sheer grubs, that makes sense to me because you can kind of distract them. They're like small individual creatures, but things like the Wollywogs, I would usually kill those and then get the filter. So that was one thing that I did remember from that speedrun, and I implemented it here. That is clearly the best and fastest strategy because you don't have to fight those guys. And I'm not that good at fighting the Wollywogs. To me, they're pretty difficult to beat without losing at least some Pikmin. I'm going to use 2 of these rocks to destroy this wall. Now we're going to get this yellow Pikmin that's in the ground over here. If you don't know, it is spawned there since the beginning of the day because there's this mechanic where if flower Pikmin die, they have like a % chance of spawning a seed where they died. So since we lost yellow Pikmin to the blowhog there previously, that's why this new Pikmin is in the ground there. Pretty cool feature that the Pikmin will sometimes get scared by the bomb rock if they're doing something nearby, so that is pretty cool. And you can see that here, I didn't bother to whistle these guys, I just let that feature help me out. I'm just trying to speed this up here, that way we can just exchange the Pikmin if we need to or just keep going. But anyway, this was a kind of good thing I improvised, getting this nectar. It's always good to have more flowers because that could really push you over the edge. Sometimes you're really close to beating a day, but you fail to just a couple seconds, so the more flowers the better. Now I'm just adjusting the amount of Pikmin we have. You can use other Pikmin types to carry stuff past the fire geysers if you time them, but I just wanted about 40 reds. That way I didn't really have to worry about that too much. Like, no matter what, I'd have enough reds to carry the items past the fire geysers. Now here on the narrow path, this is a little difficult to optimize perfectly, because what I was trying to do was have reds and yellows mostly building the bridge, then take the minimum amount of blue Pikmin, because even though the analog computer is a little farther away down the path, I usually get it to a comfortable spot before the bridge is even done being built. So I want to put as many Pikmin as I can on the bridge. Now, I can't explain to you why I didn't take out 100 Pikmin. As you can see, the total's 88. I can't explain that to you, I don't know. Maybe I just didn't notice. That probably would have helped, because it would have made it faster, of course. But anyway, as you have seen, I'm sure, sometimes I'm dismissing the Pikmin, but then they go to build the bridge and stuff like that, so it does take some time. It's just a little complicated to organize the Pikmin here, because it's a narrow path, because sometimes they'll get distracted, and because there's multiple things to deal with at once. So yeah, all that contributes. You could see here, I didn't reset or anything even though I lost some blue Pikmin. And that's because I'm just trying to beat this. So during these attempts, I didn't often reset at little inconveniences, or even sometimes major losses. Like, I just wanted to see if I could get the day done, then it would be worth it. I still have to wait for the bridge to be built. Also, I could have dismissed the Pikmin, that way the blues weren't in my party, but I just thought it'd be faster just to throw everyone, because the blues won't make it up there anyway. So you can see me doing that here. Also, one more thing I just remembered. I think we might have seen it so far in the playthrough, we might not have. But one other interesting mechanic, I don't like it, but it's kind of interesting, I guess. I think if enough Pikmin stop carrying an item, like either because an enemy kills them or they were lit on fire or something like that, even if you have enough to still carry it, like over the minimum, if enough are killed, they'll all just stop and shake their head and then become dismissed. And then of course they'll start to try to carry it again, but that is kind of weird. Because you would expect that to happen if they went under the minimum, but I'm pretty sure that can happen even when you're over the minimum. I stopped to try to distract the Swallywog because I didn't want it to interfere with the Pikmin carrying the part, but I didn't have to do that. As we can see, he's just going back into the water, and obviously it's doing that because it's like far enough away from its spawn point, so it just returns there eventually if it goes too far. Anyway, you can see here again, I'm not trying to go for perfection here. You see I just let one yellow Pikmin die, just because I didn't want to take it with me, but it was in my party and it would take too long to dismiss everyone and try to fix that mistake, so I just let him go into the water. And now I'm just trying to do whatever I can just to make sure that this is a winning attempt here, so I'm just rushing as fast as I can to the different parts, trying to get the maximum amount of Pikmin, also trying to save some Pikmin that got left behind or something like that. And there we go. With 5 seconds to spare, we can finally leave the Forest Navel. This was much harder than I expected, and we basically already discussed the reasons for that. This day 6 did not have to be as hard as it was, but either way, we got through it. You can see we took different losses here today. Lost in battle 31. You can also see we have a critically low amount of blue Pikmin, 36. And now we're going into an area that is predominantly filled with water. The distant spring is the area I thought would be the hardest in this playthrough. To me, one of the themes of this game is the bloodiness or brutality of nature, and I think that distant spring does a good job of showing that, while also showing how nature can be at the same time tranquil or serene. I will discuss this more later, but for now, let's discuss the problem I've been alluding to. We simply don't have enough blue Pikmin. Ideally, right at the start of the day, I would take out around 80 blues and set them to work on various things, since there is so much water in this location. Some things I would have them work on simultaneously, just as examples, are getting the repair bolt, building the bridge to the massage machine, killing the puppy blowhog that has the interstellar radio, and building the bridges near the gluon drive. With only 36 we can't really do that. I tried a few different things, but after 3 attempts I decided to go back to day 6 using that copied saved data from before. Day 6 is difficult, but I thought that it would be easier to improve my execution of that day, which I already had a successful strategy for, rather than grind trial and error attempts for a day 7 that starts with only 36 blues. Now ideally I would go back to day 5 and try to build a larger blue population there, but obviously that was impossible since I didn't have the saved data from that day. As you'll see, the strategy here mostly remains the same. Obviously it has a few tweaks where I prioritize the blue Pikmin and try to bolster their numbers a little bit. You can see right off the bat here, one difference is that I'm taking out all the blue Pikmin rather than leaving some in the onion, and that means we can take out less red Pikmin, but I decided to do it this way, obviously because we need more blues, so I'm just going to use 5 right here at the start to get the 5 pellet that's nearby. It's pretty easily available and it'll give us a nice amount of Pikmin, so it's a pretty good option. And you'll see I don't actually sprout that many blues today. The focus is on increasing their number. So we started the day with 46, so I want to end with more than that. And I'm going to do that by trying not to let too many die, but at the same time sprouting a few more. Now I'm going to take out some blowhogs. It would be pretty nice to carry one of their bodies back to the onion, but it does require 7 Pikmin, so... Anyway, while that's happening, I take these 40 blues and go to get the filter. You'll see that because I'm close enough, the number of Pikmin in my party starts to increase, and that's because when they defeat the blowhog, they'll try to come back to me into my party. But you could see I'm just dismissing them here, and that's fine. I just didn't want them to run to me and then run into the water. Now I'm leaving these to get the bomb rocks for later. Sometimes the beady long legs can smash some Pikmin, like when it's spawning, like when it's dropping down. So that's good we were out of the way. And you can see right here we got a very quick beady long legs kill. The key here really is the yellow Pikmin, because the faster you can weigh it down, the faster you can get red Pikmin onto it, and then that's where the real damage comes from. At least that's how I would describe my strategy. Anyway though, we can see here that mechanic I mentioned before where if a certain amount of Pikmin, I don't know exactly how it works of course, but if a certain amount of Pikmin stop carrying an object, they'll all shake their head and stop for a second, even though there is the minimum amount still trying to carry it. So I don't know why that happens, maybe if you remove a certain percentage of them. Once again, I'm using Olimar to distract these shearwigs. I always liked using these little geysers. There's some pretty cool variety to the levels, not only the enemies, but, you know, there's these little interactable things like the candy pop buds. Those are pretty cool in some puzzles, or just useful sometimes. There's those sticks that the Pikmin can climb, and you can get them onto a higher platform. And then there's the geysers that the Pikmin need to activate, but their function is to boost Olimar's height and get him onto some higher platform, so it's pretty cool. I think the designers did a very nice job crafting like a variety of obstacles and interactable things. Like even the different types of walls, that's pretty cool. Like there's stone walls, bramble walls, and there's different types. Like the darker ones tend to take more bomb marks to destroy. I don't think I've mentioned these up until now, but these little shortcuts here, well, let me say this first. The reason I climbed up this and attacked the other side of the wall is because I didn't want the bomb marks to accidentally blow up the Pikmin carrying the guard satellite or something like that. But that does remind me, there are really nice little shortcuts throughout the game, especially in this area. They have these little stalagmite formations that form these little ramps that Olimar can climb. The Pikmin can also climb it, but it is kind of hard to get them through the tight spaces if you have a lot of them. But they came in handy here. And one thing I like about them is that they can often cut down your travel time, like if you have to go back to the landing zone in this area, but they are not so beneficial as to cut down the Pikmin's time that they need to carry stuff back to the landing zone. We're not going to need that many blues. I still do want to take some extra. That way we could carry some food if we come across it. Now I thought this was a pretty smart move. Usually I would take as many Pikmin as possible, so 100 down the narrow path, because there's a lot of tasks to do down there. And the more Pikmin you have, the more you can speed up the bridge. But I thought, let me just leave the bare minimum. Well, I left 22 and it only requires 20, but you know what I mean. Let me leave a minimum amount to finish carrying this, which just takes a few more seconds, but might as well use those seconds to travel and not wait for the rest of those Pikmin. So I thought that was an interesting choice. Also, you saw before I passed by like a blue 1 pellet. I should have picked that up. Obviously, I didn't need every single blue Pikmin with me, so I could have spared 1, and that would have sprouted 2 extras, so that would have been nice, but still, this day was successful, and we do have a working amount of blue Pikmin by the end of it. I was dismissing the Pikmin and going near the water's edge there to get the yellow Pikmin that's usually in the ground there. You might have noticed it was there when we just passed it before killing the Blowhog, but now it's not there. The thing is, there's this mechanic in the game where if the Pikmin are in the ground too long, obviously they become flowers over time. If they're there too long in the flower stage, they'll go underground and relocate just a little bit, and then sprout up and start that cycle over again where they're leaves. So that's what was happening here. Now right here we kind of got a little lucky. Some of them accidentally went to build the bridge, but then when I checked how many was in that dismissed group right there, there was exactly 20, so that's how many we need. So that was good. If we only had like 19, then I would have to whistle to the guys building the bridge, and then of course I wouldn't only whistle 1 blue Pikmin, I'd whistle, you know, a couple red, a couple yellow, so that would have been annoying. Now I'm interrupting these guys to get the reds to get ready to exchange with the blues. You can see it goes a little slow. It's not perfect, so it does lead us to losing some blues right here, 5 of them, to the fire. But that's an okay loss. Before, on my other successful attempt of this day, I was just losing as many Pikmin as it took, I didn't care. But at least we only lost 5 here. It's not that many. I would have been much more careless on the previous success. And now this part has a lot more time to make it back to the dolphin, so might as well take as many red Pikmin away from it as possible, because we're going to need at least some of them to carry the Libra past the fire geysers. That is just a safer option. By the way, this could be a nice time to discuss the aesthetic of this area. I like that this part of the location has just this giant gaping chasm. It goes towards that point I was making before, about how the distant spring contrasts with this area, because both these areas are difficult in my opinion, but the forest navel is more scary in appearance. It's visibly dark, so you can't see as far as you can in other areas. There's fire spewing all over the place out of certain enemies and also out of the ground. A lot of enemies come out of the ground, so there's a lot of sheer wakes and sheer grubs. So it is pretty scary in its visuals and quite hazardous. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is it has like an oppressive atmosphere where the distant spring doesn't have that, but it's kind of daunting in its own right because it has that contrast of like a beautiful calm water type of area, but there are very real threats there, and the area itself is a little dangerous with all that water. As you can see, we only have 8 reds. That's not really too much of a problem. I would prefer to have at least 15 here, because even if all the other colors die to the fire, at least it's still getting carried. But I just sped it up by putting a lot of yellows first. And as you can see, I'm prioritizing the blue safety because I'm putting the yellows as the ones that are likely to get killed. And as we see, they do get lit on fire, some of them. We have way more than enough yellow Pikmin, so that is an okay loss. Right here as well, it doesn't show on screen, but it's right behind that column I just passed. I could have picked up the blue pellet here as well, but I just didn't. I think I forgot it was there. And now the last thing to do is, while we're waiting for these 2 parts, we'll try to get in the meantime the number 1 Ionium Jet. Once again, coincidentally, we get the same exact thing here, where I accidentally got 1 yellow to come along with me, and there's just no time to save it, so we let him right into the water. Now, I was just checking the map to see if I left anyone behind. It seems like I did over there. I didn't even use the time to pluck out the yellow Pikmin that was in the ground. And it seems like we left some other ones standing right by that one that's in the ground. I just left them, there's not enough time. Because what I want to do now is try to build up the blue population a little bit, so might as well get some pellets while we're here. And ideally I would have gotten these all blue, but it just didn't work out that way. And this is kind of interesting, we didn't really cut it that close. I mean, we kind of did, but we did get all the parts on this day before the 10-second countdown, so I think that was pretty cool. Also, the 10-second countdown just started, so I was just kind of panicking or just wanted to play it safe, so I could have gotten the other pellets that are right there. I think there was like 3 more, but I just didn't. I probably should have, but either way, this didn't work out. And right here at the last second, I'm like, let me just try to get them, but that was pretty foolish. Okay, and the return to day 6 is over. This did take quite a few attempts, as you can see on screen, but I do want to say that I didn't spend too much time on this return to day 6 because a lot of the attempts were only a few minutes long because I quit and restarted at the beginning of the day. I often made mistakes there, so that's why. You know, with organizing the Pikmin out of the onions at the beginning and killing the blowhogs and stuff like that. So I didn't spend too much time on this, although I did spend a lot of time trying to get the initial success of day 6. But anyway, it's all over now. Now we can move past this and never come back to the Forest Navel. As I've been saying, the Distant Spring is difficult itself, so we have to get, on both days we're here, we have to get 5 parts a day. It does turn out to be easier than I expected, but I feel like we really did need to go back and get more blue Pikmin, because now you can see instead of 36, we're starting with 51. It's not that much, but it does allow us to get, let's say, 3 parts at once rather than 2, something like that. The repair bolt is probably the easiest part in this area, but in my opinion, it's still an interesting part to get because there's an interesting puzzle here, which you don't really see in any other part of the game. And stuff like that is really cool where the developers, even if the puzzle is not difficult, there are a lot of unique puzzles, and like they do a very good job of utilizing the mechanics they made and creating like a variety of set pieces or just different puzzle types, stuff like that. So yeah, just because it's easy doesn't mean it's not interesting or fun. Next, we're going to start this bridge being built to get the massage machine later, but as you can see here, kind of strange, my Pikmin organization and maneuvering is very poor. I spent a little longer here than I should have. Pretty foolish. We could have just waited a second for the repair bolt to be brought fully to the dolphin, but might as well take these blue Pikmin because we'll have time to wait later when other pieces are being carried. Right now we need to be as fast as possible, so I took the blue Pikmin, and we have a nice amount, 33. We're going obviously to kill the blowhog that has the interstellar radio. And you don't need 33, but I really want this one to be as fast as possible because it is pretty far away, and there are some enemies nearby, so it's always best to have it moving fast. Now, I paused the game here. I think I had to do something or someone was talking to me. And that does give us an interesting opportunity to see another, well, I guess interesting aspect of this game. When it's paused, some things continue to move. So time obviously stops and things like that, but the water, as you can see in the background, seems like it's still flowing. The blowhog still has that glowing effect that goes from its snout to like its backside. And even at the bottom, you can see the UI still has that pattern of reflecting moving light. So things like this are pretty cool. You'll also see later that certain enemies, like the bull bears in this location, if you pause the game while they're on screen, you could see their spots still pulsating. So stuff like that is pretty cool. I don't know if that's an oversight or this was like a stylistic choice, but either way, it's pretty interesting. Here, I just wanted the blowhog to be far away from the water dumples that are nearby, so sometimes you can get caught in this loop where you're approaching the blowhog, but he's constantly moving away from you, because it wants to be a certain distance before it does its attack. So anyway, we get a relatively fast blowhog kill here, I think. One excellent thing about the sound design I don't believe I've mentioned yet is, of course I like the music very much, but I really love that there's adaptive music. So when you're in combat, Sometimes it plays at the wrong times, like you're taking down a pellet posy or something, but it's because that counts as an enemy. But anyway, when you're in combat, the music will change to become more dramatic. So in this location, I believe it has like a dun 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 dun. That type of thing gets added to the background of the regular ambient music. It's pretty cool. In Pikmin 2, that's another thing they expand on. When you're carrying a treasure in that game, the music will also have an adaptive aspect to it. So it'll sound more upbeat or more special or something like that. And it of course also still has the battle aspect where it'll get more dramatic if you're in combat. Once again, you can see to take out this blowhog, I'm waiting for him to start his attack, and then I go underneath him. Because as you can see, both of us are moving back and forth. Like I said, it wants to be a certain distance away before it starts its attack. That blowhog does not have to be killed, but I think you'll be able to tell it could be pretty annoying if you're carrying a part, and then the blowhog interrupts that because it blows the Pikmin everywhere. That could really slow us down, so might as well kill this enemy. Same thing with the swooping snitch bugs. Those guys are pretty difficult sometimes to get because of how they move around, and they can be pretty annoying. One cool thing about this game, and you'll see it with multiple enemies like the swooping snitch bug here, but also the wallywogs and even the puffy blowhog. I don't know the exact numbers, but if you have a certain amount of Pikmin on them, they'll be weighed down and often can't get up. And sometimes will be caught in a cycle and just try to get up and just be dragged back down again and can't even shake off the Pikmin, which is really cool. That type of mechanic kind of adds a little realism, like, because it's taking into account the weight of the Pikmin. It's kind of cool. Once again, not the best organization, but I don't know, is it really my fault that they went into the water like that? Pretty slow over here. This is kind of shocking watching it back, that I was so slow organizing near these bridges. And this is still a successful attempt, so it just goes to show you how far you can go to optimize this gameplay. Now what I was doing on previous attempts at this day was taking these 4 bomb rocks and somewhat breaking down, like breaking it down halfway, the rock wall that's right next to this spot, but you don't need to break down that rock wall, so I just left it because there's a better use for the bomb rocks, which you'll see after we do this little section where we get more bomb rocks and the massage machine. there is a bull bear right here, and it is kind of intimidating because that's a difficult enemy. But the thing is, the Pikmin will just walk by him. He's not in their path, so you don't have to interact with him at all. Right here you can see an example of that technique I mentioned a couple days ago, where I leave the food underneath the onion. You can see those Pikmin just brought a shearwig and then they became idle, and then they went to get the other shearwig that's right underneath there, so pretty cool. Anyway, we had enough near the massage machine to break down this wall, but now with these extra 4 bomb rocks, I'm trying to take out the bull bear. That way I just don't lose too many Pikmin to him. It didn't go perfectly, 1 was wasted there at the end, but we did bring down his health, so that was good. Once again, rather than waiting for this to be completely brought to the dolphin, I thought might as well stop these guys and get working on another task. If these guys continued carrying these little shearwigs, I was afraid that they would awaken the bull bears, because we're definitely going to awaken them by carrying this large part. So I just didn't want them to be preemptively awoken, so that's why I stopped those guys. And now we're about to carry the glue-on drive, which is one of the heaviest parts in the game. Once again, this is just foolishness. Easily I could have just put as many Pikmin as possible onto the glue-on drive, but instead I started throwing the Pikmin, then I went back to get that one red Pikmin, but now I'm behind the part, and obviously I'm stuck behind it now. I can't go up ahead of it because the part itself is pretty thick. Obviously this didn't cause really any issues, but it was foolish nonetheless. And mistakes like this can compound over time. There's no reason to fully kill these guys, so I'm just trying to distract them. We just lost some Pikmin obviously, so might as well take out more, and I chose yellows because we're about to go get the UV lamp, and we need yellows for that. That bull bear is still chasing us, but we'll be far enough away that it will go back to sleep, so that's not going to cause us any issues. Now, I don't know if all enemies regen health over time in this game, but these bull bears definitely do. You could see before he was almost dead, and now he's almost at full health. We're a little bit pressed for time. The day has been going well, but yeah, I'm just letting those Pikmin distract the puffy blowhog and possibly drown and all that, just because I want to prioritize getting the part. And right here, another strange maneuvering. I didn't want to throw all the Pikmin up there because I felt like that would take too long, so I tried to maneuver them up this ramp. And I eventually do get them up there, but I don't know, that could have been done a little faster as well. This is another part in the game that's not really hard. You only need 10 Pikmin to carry this. This is probably the lightest part in the game. But it is, again, a pretty interesting puzzle. Like, there's a narrow ramp you have to consider, and you gotta maneuver the yellow Pikmin with those powerful enemies nearby, and to get this part, so I don't know, I like it. Now I'm trying to recover whatever Pikmin I can. You can see I prioritize the blues over the yellows. I want to save the blues from being left behind, but obviously drown the yellows in the process. Alright, and that's the final part, so this day's done. Very awesome. We cut it very close once again, and we had a lot of losses today, but we got it done. Again, like I said at the beginning of this day, this wasn't as hard as I expected. Definitely much easier than day 6. Really, it just took me some trial and error to find out in what order to do all the different tasks on this day, and we got it done. Even through all that, we got a nice amount of blue Pikmin and even increased them today, so that was good. Otherwise, I'm pretty satisfied with the other populations. They look good to me. And maybe it was actually pretty good back then where we gave the pearl to the yellow Pikmin, because we're only down to 37, so we have been using those extra yellows we had. Even though they died and we didn't save them, they were helping us out because whatever, they distracted enemies, they helped us carry items but were burned by fire. Whatever it was, they did have a use, so that was good. By the way, I really do like all the cutscenes in this game. Like the landing cutscenes, that's what made me think of this, but it's pretty cool because on day 7, or just the first day you come here, you'll see from this landing cutscene the repair bolt in the background. And then I like how you can kind of also see your progress, because on this day, we don't see the repair bolt, but also we see that I destroyed the dark rock wall that's nearby, so that's pretty cool. Anyway, I don't think we need any yellow Pikmin at all today. Well, that's actually thanks to a bit of a glitch or an exploit. You'll see what I mean later. Now we're just taking out some enemies. They are going to be pretty annoying to us, so they'll obviously get in the way. Might as well take them out early while we have a lot of Pikmin in our party. None of them died yet, of course. Alright, that worked out very well. 2 enemies that could be dangerous to your strategy or your Pikmin are the Bullbear and the Snitchbug, and we took them out quite nicely right there. And that was not entirely skill. Sometimes you just cannot get the Snitchbug because it keeps changing direction and swooping and stuff like that. So I'm glad that worked out the way it did. We had kind of a nice amount of flowers, but yeah, now we have nearly all leaves, so that does suck, but at least we took out the blowhog. But yeah, I guess that's another thing. I keep calling it the variety, but I think maybe a better way to say it is just that the designers did a really good job of either having the systems in the game interact or just having a variety of impacts. I don't know how to exactly say it, but you can see certain enemies will kill all your Pikmin. Some are better at that than others. Obviously they're dangerous in different ways, but others will not kill your Pikmin, they'll just inconvenience you, like the Mamuta, which we haven't seen in this playthrough, and obviously we won't. But also the Puffy Blowhog. It'll take away their flowers, and also it will distract them kind of and like push them around. So I do like, you know, the diversity of the impacts. Anyway, there's a lot to do in like a concentrated area because we basically did half of the location, geographically speaking. We did like the large watery half of it in the previous day, and today we're doing this other half. So yeah, I was having a lot of the reds do things like take down walls and build bridges and stuff like that. And now while that's happening, we'll just do this little puzzle here. Oh, look at that. I just left one of those blue flower Pikmin right there. This is the first time I realized that, so we definitely left that guy behind. Very sad. I'm stopping these guys from carrying the pilot seat all the way, because I believe they will wake up that one bull bear we left. Might as well stop them because that guy can be pretty dangerous, so might as well leave him to wake up later. Because we're definitely going to wake him up. But yeah, no need to lose any Pikmin right now, really. As I mentioned before, the bull bear spots will continue to pulsate even if the screen is paused. But you can see here, they even still pulsate when the enemy is dead. And now this is the setup for that glitch or exploit I was mentioning. Now this is another strategy that I was talking about before where it's not one that I came up with myself. I don't remember exactly where I saw it. I'm not sure about that, but yeah, I definitely would not have thought of something like this. I don't often think about how to like find exploits in games. I don't think I'm that good at that. But anyway, yeah, this is pretty cool. What you're trying to do is basically have the bull bear miss attacking you, but then you kind of are lifted up by its head and pushed forward, and then that'll push you up onto the ledge in front of you. And that allows us kind of to get out of bounds and bypass a puzzle where we would need yellow Pikmin. You can see I'm walking against the edge. You can't, there's an invisible wall. You can't actually move all the way to the right. So you'll see this right here. Yeah, see this? There's an invisible wall right there. Anyway, this is an easy way to get the Chronos reactor, and it saves a lot of time. So yeah, otherwise we would have to do this puzzle where we're switching out blues for yellows, and then switching out those yellows for blues again. So pretty cool. but that does take a long time. Now we have to take out these Wollywogs. They can cause us quite a lot of trouble if, you know, we forget about them or something like that, and they stop my blue Pikmin from carrying the part nearby, or destroying the wall or whatever. You can see we lose a lot of red Pikmin, but they are pretty expendable for us. So yeah, and this was not the quickest it could have been, of course. Like I said before, I'm not the best at killing the Wollywogs. I did let the Kronos reactor go all the way to the dolphin here. I just think I wasn't fast enough to stop it, or whatever, I was distracted, but you can see that caused the bull bear to wake up, and now he's directly in the path of that Ionium jet, so that sucks, but I just tried to distract him and get that part past here. Might as well, I guess. But now we don't need this bull bear alive anymore, so we can kill him, although obviously that's way easier when you have a lot of Pikmin. I think this was a moment of indecision right here. I could have done a few things like have the Pikmin in my party drink the nectar while the jet was carried, or I could have just sped up the jet a little bit because it didn't have the maximum amount of Pikmin, but I kind of just waited there and then decided to take everyone and move on. And then I got this nectar over here, so that was good that we utilized that. And like I said, we could have killed the bull bear here. We had a nice amount of Pikmin with us, but I think I just left him because I didn't want to take the risk of losing a lot of my Pikmin right now. And now since we took care of the bridge near here and the wall, we're ready to get this part. Excellent. We one-cycled the armored cannon beetle here, and I don't often do that, so that was pretty nice. It seems like we came at almost just the right time, so that is nice here. But the thing is, this is one of the farthest parts because I didn't break down that other rock wall. Like, there's a rock wall right near there that we did not break down on the previous day. Also, this is a cool feature. I love how if you have a certain type of Pikmin, like usually this happens with the blue Pikmin, they'll take a little bit of an altered route compared to the other types because they can go through the water. We saw that in the Forest of Hope, and now we saw that here again. And we only have simple things left to do here, just carry the parts. Back to the dolphin, we already did all the puzzles, but you do see that we are cutting it close. Like, there's 3 parts we still need to get, and we just got the hurry up message, so let's see what happens. This looks pretty close, like we have 8 seconds, but we already are kind of in the landing zone with this part. But I think because most of these Pikmin are leaves, they're not really moving that fast, so you can see the timer is still counting down and we're cutting it very close. I feel like if I didn't put these extra few Pikmin on it, I feel like we would not have made it. And when this part collection cutscene is done, you see we go back to gameplay for only like a few frames, maybe 10. So yeah, we were 10 frames away from failure, but we did manage to get all the parts on this day. That was the closest we ever cut it in this playthrough. You could see the strategy for this day was not that complicated. We didn't interact with, you know, a lot of danger. We killed enemies pretty easily, and now we are done with the Distant Spring. Now onto the final trial, which I thought actually, before attempting it obviously, I thought that would be kind of like a victory lap type of thing, where, alright, we already did all the hard parts, now let's go do the very simple final trial. But the thing is, I am obviously out of practice playing this game because I haven't played it in a couple of years, so it would make sense that I'm also out of practice for the final boss, and he does give us a little bit of trouble. Not that it's super difficult for me in this run, but yeah, I thought, okay, this will only take 1 or 2 attempts, but it did take a little bit more. Just as a side comment, you could see we're not going in with the ideal amount of Pikmin, I guess. We're a little low on reds, but we should be fine. We still have enough to beat the game, of course. When you unlock this area, the final trial, there's that little comet event that happens at the top of the level select, so that's pretty cool. So the music in this area is interesting. It's got like maybe a playful type of upbeat or exploratory type of theme, but then you can hear sometimes in the background there's this part that's descending, so it's like dun 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 dun, like that. So that does add like some anxiety to it. So I do like this track. It is interesting, but it's not my favorite in the game, but I think it is pretty fitting for this area. The task of the blue Pikmin is going to take the longest, so that's why I take them first. This was not good execution because you can climb up onto this platform. So what I should have done was thrown the Pikmin on the other one, the second twig bridge, then climbed up next to the first one and dismissed them right next to that. That would have been much quicker. I like this bomb rock holding metal pipe. It's kind of interesting that you throw the yellow Pikmin into it from the top. You've never had to do that before. And I do also like that in each area, the things that have the bomb rocks are unique. Over here, as we just saw, there's those weird metal pipes. Then in the Forest of Hope is the metal cans. In the impact site, they even have them inside the cardboard box. The distant spring has those cool animal skulls. Maybe there's squirrel or small dog skulls or something like that. I don't think there's supposed to be any creature we know, like a bulborb. But anyway, in the Forest Navel, it's a rusted, different type of pipe. Obviously the devs could have just included the standard metal cans from the Forest of Hope in every location, but that is very nice that each one has a unique type of bomb rock place. Also, every place that you find the bomb rocks is dark for some reason. I don't know exactly why they did that. They're always in a dark container of some kind. So maybe we can infer things like they require darkness to form. Kind of interesting. You'll see that the puzzles here, it's not really puzzles, it's like there's one puzzle that has many parts. So yeah, you have to build the bridges with the blue Pikmin, get the red Pikmin to move the box, and get the yellows to carry the bomb rocks and break down the wall. I do like this. It's not my favorite area, but I think this is a pretty good final trial because I like that it has you, and this should be obvious that they should have done this, but yeah, it is nice that you have to use all three types almost at once, and that's kind of like you putting to the test your skills that you've gained throughout the game with using each type of Pikmin. Rewatching this, it is strange to me that I took so many blue Pikmin. The thing is, we only have like 40 reds, so there's not that many. Ideally, we would have a lot of reds and a lot of yellows. I guess in order to have 100, I kept the blues out, but we were right by the onion. We could have put some more blues in the onion and then taken some more yellows out or something. That probably would have been helpful. But yeah, I'm not entirely sure why I did that. Anyway, in this area, I think there's the weakest bramble walls in the game. You can see that one just took one bomb rock to destroy. This one also gets knocked down pretty quickly. One thing that's pretty cool about coming back here after playing Pikmin 2 is that almost every location in this game gets reused in some way in Pikmin 2, although obviously in a transformed type of a way. It's not the exact same location, so I really like that type of thing when games do that. There was one kind of cool instance of that in Banjo-Kazooie where you had this one area, but you had to like visit it in different seasons, and you had access to different things. That was pretty cool. But anyway, this spot right here with this large circle is actually the landing zone of a location in Pikmin 2, so that type of stuff is pretty cool when you notice it. Anyway, I like the design of this boss. He is sufficiently difficult in my opinion. And a little bit of that is due to the controls, so you'll see I constantly need to pick up a bomb rock holding yellow Pikmin. That way he'll eat the bomb rock and get stunned. Then I need to pick up the red Pikmin and throw them onto like his cheek and attack him, and that's where the real damage comes from. But as I have been talking about on previous days, the controls are not the best. It would have been much better if it had that feature from Pikmin 2 or the new play control version of Pikmin, where you could use the D-pad to switch out what type of Pikmin you're holding. That would have been really helpful, because obviously right here what I have to do is actually maneuver Olimar to be next to the Pikmin I want to throw. And you'll see I make a few mistakes here, but I already did attempt this a couple times, so I did get some practice in. And I think you really just need to have patience for this, because you need to do a lot of cycles in order to kill him. At least I do. Speaking of how you need to have patience with this boss, in other words, it takes time. The real challenge of this area, although it's not that challenging of course, the challenge of it though comes from if you're doing this type of run, in my opinion. Because for me, what I usually do if I'm just playing the game, I'll do one day in this location where I do the puzzle and open everything up. Then the next day, I'll spend the whole day fighting this guy, just in case it takes extra long. So it is pretty interesting to challenge yourself to do the whole area in one day. I feel like that has improved my experience of this location. You might be wondering why I have only a few Pikmin with me, like I left a lot of the other ones in a safe type of area. And that's because I didn't want... he has this jumping attack, so I didn't want him to kill all my Pikmin if I had them all with me, but also I feel like it's easier to maneuver when there's just like a few of them, and then when I run out of bomb rocks or run out of reds I can just go back and grab more. But yeah, I like to carry a small amount with me. Relatively small, you know. One interesting thing we just witnessed is that when you're fighting the boss, he has his own boss theme, but then if you go a certain distance away from him or something like that, the song will change back to the area theme, and that could be kind of jarring sometimes, because later in the video you'll see that I'm still in his arena, but I'm just far away from him, and then the song starts to change. So that can be a little weird, but I do like his boss theme. I think it's pretty intimidating. And additionally, one thing I noticed for the first time when doing this playthrough, only this guy, the Emperor Bullblacks, and the BD Longlegs have their own boss theme. So yeah, it's only those two enemies. Right here, this attack is pretty difficult. You have to see it coming in order to really dodge it. And the tell is that his eyes will become wider and he like kind of shakes, and obviously he'll jump up, but if you only notice that, it's a little too late. But yeah, that attack is pretty difficult. That definitely ended a few attempts. I have already said previously how I like the enemy design in this game, but now I want to mention another reason why I like it. I feel like they do a good job of telling you a story almost with the creature design. So you could tell this looks similar to a Bulborb. That's pretty cool, so you might assume they're in the same family. You can see he has moss on his back. You might be able to tell, okay, he's tremendously old, or from the fact that he was burrowed underground, we could take a guess that it stays still for long periods of time, and that's why the moss is on its back. So I think it's pretty cool. And there we go. I thought we might have to do one more cycle, so I called everyone back, but as soon as I did that, he died. And it's interesting, you don't get his body, like he just sinks into the sand, so it's unknown if he actually dies. And obviously there is a gameplay reason for that too. I mean, there's no reason to collect a body, so they probably just didn't want you to have some random distraction. But what we see in the game actually kind of goes against that idea, because they do give us these random 5 pellets. so that was kind of weird. I guess they might be useful if you lost a lot of Pikmin to that guy and can't even carry the secret safe. Also, that reminds me, the heaviest ship part in the game right now is the gluon drive, but in the Japanese version of the game, this part, the secret safe, is the heaviest part. So I don't like those types of changes where the localization makes stuff easier for Western releases. That happened in Final Fantasy IV. Also, I like right here, we've never seen this in the playthrough so far, but when the yellow Pikmin are holding bomb rocks, but then they are sent back into the onion, even at the end of the day, they'll just drop the bomb rocks where they're standing, so that's pretty cool. And that's it, the final day is done. I have finally recovered every ship part. Now I can return home to Hakatate. By the way, I always used to read it as Hakatate. I think that sounds fine, but it's Hakatate because it's actually named after the address of one of Nintendo's buildings. And I guess that reminds me of this as well. Almar's ship is called the SS Dolphin. It's named after the project name of the GameCube, which was Dolphin. Alright, and that is the end of the gameplay portion of this video. If you were here to see how I completed the 9-day run, then that part is obviously over. Thank you very much for watching. Otherwise, if you still want to see the next statistics screen and then also the next few cutscenes, then I will be commenting over that a little bit as well. Right here it's implied that, you know, the Pikmin now kind of learned from Olimar's leadership and can fend for themselves, so they go by themselves to attack this bulb orb, which is kind of interesting since there's no bulb orbs in the whole area, but maybe since, you know, it's nighttime, he woke up and wandered towards the onions. Anyway, this is really cool. This made me theorize as a kid. I just found this very fascinating when all these onions are lifting up. I think they're just flying into the air because it's nighttime, so... But that's pretty cool. Now that the dolphin is much higher, you could see this whole view and get to see, wow, there's different types of Pikmin that we never found. I don't know, I just really like that. The music here is very triumphant and heroic sounding. It makes you really feel the accomplishment, especially if you struggled during the game. So if you're doing a challenging run, or it's your first few playthroughs and you really struggle to get all 30 parts, then I feel like this is nice and satisfying. That does also make me think about the narrative itself. The story here is very simple. That I already knew, but the thing is, it's kind of like that more classical type of story where it's just the hero faces a conflict and then by the end he overcomes it. That's basically the whole story. And I think this game shows, at least in my opinion, because I really like the narrative of this game, that if you execute it the right way, this type of story can still work. It doesn't feel too simple, at least to me, because I really like the writing. I feel like you learn a lot about Olimar based on what he says. It's a very intriguing premise where this guy, just on vacation, he's stuck by himself now because there was an accident and he's in this life or death situation and he's stumbling upon creatures that can help him, some that want to harm him, and, you know, can he make it off the planet? I think that's really cool. And throughout the whole thing, he is worried about his life, but also he's curious and he wants to learn. And I feel like the player will identify with that, or at least could. They might be curious as well. Once again, I'll mention the music. This is very nice, very calming. This is like, okay, the journey is done and let's look over what we did. I like this inclusion of the ship part screen, and it doesn't tell you what the distinction is, but the yellow are the necessary parts you need in order to beat the game, and then the blue are the optional parts that you don't need, but you do need them if you want to get the best ending. And that does make me think that the developers wanted this to be replayable. Like at the end of the game, like even if you get the worst ending, I believe you'll see this type of screen, and you could say to yourself, oh, okay, there's some kind of distinction, whatever, and Olimar himself gives you some hints throughout the game that not all parts are necessary. But anyway, I think you could tell, even from seeing that statistics screen, that I do like going back to this game And before I accomplished a 9-day run, I was constantly cutting down the time and seeing how fast I could beat the game. And I really like doing that, although I have heard some people online say that this is really not a replayable game. So that just comes down to your preferences, I think. Because it's not replayable as in the sense of you can choose what to do, kind of. You can choose the order of stuff, but that's pretty much it. Otherwise, this will probably only appeal to you for replayability if you like to constantly improve your high score, that type of thing. And I do like that in this game, because there is a timed mechanic. But if you had like infinite days, I probably wouldn't replay it as much. Also, I want to point out, I really like this. You get to see clips of different cutscenes that you encountered throughout the game in the shadow of the planet. I find it pretty satisfying because once again it's like you're looking over the past, and of course it's especially satisfying if you really struggled throughout the game. Anyway, this game is not perfect. It has a few flaws, some we discussed, some not, but it is one of my favorite games. Making this video took a lot longer than I thought it would, so thank you if you watched this far. Of course we're not done yet, we still have that enemy reel, which is quite excellent. But anyway, I still hope you liked the gameplay and my commentary over it. Do let me know if you have any feedback, if you have any thoughts on the game. While we're watching the credits here, this gives me a chance to give a special shout out to Rybko, who made the panels that you've seen throughout this video on the sides. So thank you very much. I think they are very nice, very cool to look at, and I hope you guys enjoyed them as well. And I didn't have anywhere else in the video to really mention this, so I'm going to toss out a random topic here. When Olimar is in the dolphin, particularly in the opening cutscene, don't you think it looks a little weird that his antenna and the beacon on it clips through the glass dome, like the radiation canopy? As a kid, I did notice that. I thought that was weird. I was thinking, alright, maybe it's like a futuristic type of thing, but I don't know. I feel like that was just an oversight. The devs just didn't care that his model clipped through, I guess. I don't know. This is an awesome inclusion in the game. I really love, and I did, especially when I was a kid, love learning about whatever, my favorite games or shows or something like that, so it's pretty cool. You get to actually see notes about each creature in depth. Like I mentioned before, sometimes at the end of a day, Olimar will give you some information inside of his diary about an enemy you encountered on that day. But this is really awesome because it examines every enemy in the game. And the devs did a nice job of getting some really cool shots of the enemies or just funny shots of them, so that's pretty nice. We can see a potential flaw here. In the burrowing snaggart description, he mentions the burrowing snarrow, but we never encounter that in the game. And this is an alien planet, so you would guess that he's not talking about a related species from his own planet or something like that, so that could just be, you know, a vestige of cut content where there was another enemy. Speaking of cut content or content changing in development, this enemy reel might give us some insight. You'll see there are enemies in strange locations and also ship parts in strange locations that we don't see throughout the game, so maybe that type of stuff changed throughout development and this can give us a little insight into that. But also, that might not be the case. As you can see right here, the dwarf Bulborb is meant to be a mimic, although Olimar doesn't say that, but it is one of those species that mimics others in order to get like a advantage. Obviously the dwarf Bulborbs probably want the protection of the large Bulborbs, so they pretend, not consciously, but they pretend to be children of that species. Anyway, it's pretty interesting because throughout the game, even when Olimar's talking about the parts, you can see the writers or the developers had scientific or at least real phenomena in mind when writing the text for the game. So it's pretty cool on the biological side. Like I was mentioning, there's stuff like mimics. He mentions how they adapt to their environment or evolve a certain way, things like that. But when talking about the parts, you know, things like quarks are mentioned with the gluon drive, interesting stuff like that. So I don't know, I feel like that's a little bit of an attention to detail because they try to add realism to it, or, you know, believable explanations for this world. Right here as well, is this another flaw? I don't know. But Puffstool description, he says, many consider this walking fungus a delicacy. How could that be possible? Because obviously he's only encountering this planet for the first time. So that makes it sound like people from his planet commonly, you know about the Puffstool, but I don't know, I thought that was kind of weird. Another example of a cool little tidbit or something like that. The males of the species are able to fly. So we only encounter the males of the shearwig because the females stay burrowed underground. That's cool. I guess another interesting thing is that this will even show you enemies you have not encountered in the game. So notably the Smoky Prog right there, but other ones like the Gulix and the Mamuta. But I don't think that's a flaw, you know, they just made one kind of enemy reel to put at the end of the game. But that might have been interesting if it only showed enemies that you encountered or that killed your Pikmin or something like that. That could be kind of interesting. Another thing is we saw earlier that it showed us the pellet posy, so it could have been cool if it also discussed the grass that the Pikmin pluck and also those things I call pop rocks, like those little rocks that can give nectar in the Forest Navel and Distant Spring. I like this distinction as well. The regular Wollywog, it's lost its color over time, probably because it's not exposed to the light, so it doesn't need that color. But then the Wollywogs that are outside, the yellow variant, they still have their color. That's pretty cool. Alright, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. By the way, there's a Discord server for this channel, so feel free to join that. The link will be in the description. Anyway, I will see you in the next video.